Everyone. Welcome to our Epac meeting for May 20th, 2022. The fact that it's May is just blowing my mind every time I see it. We'll give about one more minute for folks to join, and then we will get started with what is undoubtedly an action-packed agenda. But thank you for taking time to spend with us this morning. Okay, it looks like admissions or folks coming in the waiting room is slowing down, so we will go ahead and kick off. It's great to see so many familiar faces this morning. It's been a while since we've been together. I hope everyone's school year is starting to work towards wrapping up and doing so on a really positive note. We know it's a hectic time of year and appreciate your time this morning with us, so we will make very good use of it. Just a couple of housekeeping items. Please keep in mind that today's meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded at the conclusion of the meeting. It's a great opportunity for you to share with your colleagues in the work the input and impact that Epac has. You can just share the link with them at any time and include them in the process. Also, please mute your microphone unless you are speaking, just so we can stay focused, and leave your camera on if at all possible. Our agenda today, we've done a little shuffling based on the since the agenda that we sent you last week, but it's all the same content, just reordered a little bit. We are going to start by talking about our Epact structure, which is actually a topic brought forward by one of our Epact members, Dr. Zach Roselle, with a recommendation, and we're going to talk through next steps for that recommendation or coming out of it. Then we're going to look at Chapter 229, which is a proposal item. We are going to get an update on Epac's working groups. Really excited to share with this advisory committee where we're going in that direction. And then the bulk of our time will be reviewing member and stakeholder feedback on the EPF. And I would be remiss if I did not take a moment to thank everyone who worked really diligently with their organizations and their counterparts in the field to provide feedback on the EPF. It is our genuine intention for the effective preparation framework to be for the field and by the field, and the feedback that y'all provided is certainly going to help us enact that. And then finally, we've got a couple of other member questions that came in that we'll address as we close out today. So first, let's kick off with the structure of Epac. This topic came to light. I was delighted to have a conversation with Dr. Roselle last week, and in that conversation, he mentioned that he was going to be sharing a recommendation with us to be presented at this meeting. And I put the entire text of the recommendation here on this slide. However, you were sent this as an attachment last Thursday or Friday, I believe, so you also have it in a document form. And to give a summary here of what the recommendation is, it's really pointing out that the leadership structure and reporting mechanisms for Epact and their connection with the SPEC as the only advisory committee, there's room for improvement. There's room for ways that we can do this better. And I'm going to highlight specifically what the recommendation is. You'll see here that Dr. Roselle is recommending that we establish officers for the Epac, including a chair, vice chair, and secretary, that we set term limits. And he also prior in the letter mentioned wanting to have direct reporting structures to the board. So as we do when we get recommendations and we're starting to look at how we can change and continuously improve our operations, our first step is to go to statute and see where do we have statutory authority, where do we have opportunity, what are the guardrails. And so in the last year, I can tell you I've learned how to do this more deftly with the support of the team and Christy and Laura in particular. So we did take a step to see how would we get from here to there? What would the steps need to be? Where is their guidance in statute? And what we did find is that there's actually a chapter in the Texas Government Code 2110 that is specifically related to state agency advisory committees. And not only is there a whole chapter on it, it does require that advisory boards have a presiding officer. It also has several other requirements, so we'll walk through those today. So what we realized is that we actually have not been in compliance with this statute in terms of how our advisory council, of how Epac operates. So first and foremost, need to give a really big shout out and thank you to Dr. Roselle. And I understand Liz and Gina were co-authors of the proposal. So I want to say thank you for raising the question. because as we've run traps on this and run it up the flagpole to the Attorney General's office, we actually have to get the advisory committee's house in order, so to speak, in order to be in compliance with statute. So what I thought we would do today is just share very transparently what the statute is, the applicable statute. We'll walk through it. I'm going to highlight the parts that are most pertinent to Epac, and then share our current thinking on both how we'll move forward to get into compliance, as well as how we'll continue to operate during the rulemaking timeline, because this will require rulemaking. So let's jump right into the Texas Government Code. It is Friday at 10 o'clock in the morning. I cannot imagine a better way to spend a few minutes with you guys than jumping into some statute. So we'll do that. And here we go. I also want to share the link with you on this, but I'm not sure how to do that while I'm sharing. Christy, would you mind just Googling the Government Code 2110 and sending them that link? You can get to that quicker than I can without stopping sharing. Do you mind? Thank you.
Sure.
And we'll follow up with this as a document too. So if you would like to have it for some weekend reading, it will be handy. But I'm going to highlight the key pieces here. The first we'll start off with is the definition. So according to code, an advisory committee is a committee, council, commission, task force, or entity with multiple members. Check, we have that. That as its primary function advises the state agency and the executive branch of the state government. So our clear guidance from the AG's office. The last chunk of code here, of statute here, is the establishment of the statement of purpose and tasks and reporting requirements. So we actually, by rule, so this is where the rulemaking process kicks in, we will need to state the purpose and tasks of the committee and describe the way the committee will report to the agency. Pardon me. And then in terms of evaluation, we'll need to do an annual evaluation of the committee, its cost and effectiveness related to the committee's work, usefulness, and the cost, including cost to agency staff time for support. Very lastly is the duration of the committee. Unless we establish another piece of guidance in rule, the committee would automatically be abolished or have to be reestablished on the 4th anniversary date of its creation. So that is a lot to digest in just a few minutes, but I did want to walk you through where we are right now. We recognize that this is going to take collaboration between staff and the current Epac, and certainly guidance from the board. We anticipate this being a discussion item at the July meeting, where we will share first a mea culpa of us saying, hey, we are needing to get some things straight here and get into compliance. We have a plan for doing that. We'll share that plan with them and get their feedback, and that will kick off the rulemaking process. What I want to share really clearly here is that a highlight of that discussion item in July is going to be our strong recommendation that we continue to meet with the current Epac membership throughout the duration of the rulemaking process, that there is no blip in service or connection between the Epac and staff and the board in that time, because as you can see here, the rulemaking process, even at its most expedited, which is what I've provided you, it's going to be next summer before we actually have an Epac in place that meets the Texas Government Code 2110. So we'll discuss this item in July, get board feedback, get your feedback between now and then. It'll be a proposal in September, adoption at December, all things going well. SBOE in January, which gives us about the first quarter of 2023 to do the configuration of the board. It will then need to be approved by the board at the April meeting, and we'll be looking for a summer 2023 launch of the official house in order version of Epac. And that's where we are. So I know that's a lot of information. I'm guessing you can see why we would have moved this to the top of the meeting to make sure that the rest of the meeting, when we are talking about how we genuinely intend to continue integrating the work and feedback of this group, is a sincere and authentic measure on our part, the work toward the EPF, the working groups, all of the work that Mark is doing with 229. We want to stay tightly connected to this group, but our advice from legal counsel, our guidance from legal counsel, is that we can no longer operate as a technical advisory committee because we do not meet the statutory guidelines for that. So that's what we're going to have to walk through with the board in July to get their blessing to continue to operate as a stakeholder group, pending the completion of the rulemaking process. I know that that is a lot to digest in a very short period of time. We have a very packed agenda, and I really want to get your insight and guidance on the rest of the pieces that we have to talk about today. So I have put together a survey for you to share your initial thoughts and responses. I'm going to put the link in the chat here in just a minute. If you could fill that out sometime between now and June 1st. And we are genuinely going to ask you for your thoughts, given the government code and the guidelines and guardrails that we have there. What are your initial thoughts and wonderings about the best possible future for Epac? What are the specific things you would ask staff to keep in mind as we put this item together to present to the board in July? And there's just a couple of other questions just seeking your thoughts. So I will put that link in the chat. We will move on to the next item on our agenda today. I will say the final question of that survey is, would you like additional would you like additional contact with Emily or members of the team regarding this issue? If so, please know that we will work to gather the folks who want to continue to talk about this sometime within the next month or so. We do have some other priorities in the hopper right now, so this will not be the first item on our to-do list, but if you would like additional outreach, I'm certainly happy to connect with you individually or in small groups here in the next month or so. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and let Jessica take over, and I will find that link to the survey and throw it in the chat. But thank you so much. This is my first act of the meeting. It was mine today, so I am going to get off the mic.
I'll actually jump in. Thanks so much. So wanted to take the opportunity to just let y'all know about updates that are being proposed to the board for Chapter 229. So quick answer about what prompted these updates. So we had updates to other rule chapters that required us to do some pieces into 229. We also got great stakeholder input. There's also been legislation. And anytime that we do a full year of ASAP and calculations and Commendation Calculations, there emerges opportunities for us to be even more clear about how we describe that, and then other efforts being taken by the Epac. So at the April meeting, we did talk with the board about these updates. We had a discussion item. They were very amicable to these, did not request any changes for us. And so just wanted to provide this update to y'all about what will be going in that proposal. So on the next slide here, you'll see we've got, click one more time, we've got 6 different categories of updates that we're just going to talk through here briefly. Again, just kind of an FYI for y'all. So the first is around certification tests and the calculations for pass rates. So we're renaming and bringing clarity of language to our pass rate indicators. We'll be utilizing the column names that are content pedagogy tests and pedagogy tests that are used in the test figure. This will kind of simplify which tests go where. Also, with the introduction of the EdTPA, along with that, we added a timeline for the implementation of EdTPA into that pass rate indicator, aligned with what was proposed and adopted by the board in that presentation. And we're also necessarily going to need to move the PASL, which is the principal performance exam, from where it's currently calculated, which is in the content pedagogy category, over to the pedagogy category. But given our timelines for rulemaking, we're bringing in a timeline for that shift. And then finally, we'll be clarifying how the 291 and 391 calculation works. These are new tests. 391 is a new test. It's a replacement for 291. And we just want to make sure that when we're doing these calculations, that we aren't double counting candidates. So I'm really cleaning up and implementing some other pieces due to new tests coming online. On our next slide here, this is for where the rule text is that we utilized for the board. And I think we'll be sending this deck out. So if anyone wants to follow along and see where that actual rule text happens, this provides guidance on that. Our next slide, we are also looking at updating our data collection. So right now, on the next slide, for internships, teachers are prepared, through a number of different routes, but this is looking at our alternative certification versus our traditional undergraduate or other programs that make use of clinical teaching. So right now, for internships, we do collect information about where that happens and in what content and grade level. and the start date and end dates are entered numerous times. We're proposing to align those two collections so that for clinical teaching, we're also getting the district and the content and the grade level, and we're only having to enter the student start and end date once. Also looking here to capture information about the mentor or cooperating teacher, because there are rules related to those folks. And right now, preparation firms are having to retain that documentation locally. We want to be able to bring that in centrally and link that to other data that is available throughout our system. Also, not only being able to inform the SBEC, but also being able to link this to other data and provide it back to preparation programs in reports and dashboards. So looking forward to this piece. On our next slide, that's where that piece is in rule. And we got to have a nice conversation with some stakeholders yesterday, and we'll continue to work closely with them related to how this collection will work, because we want to make sure that it's working for the field. On our next slide here, we got some updates to sanctions procedures. Got to work, again, anytime we run stuff, we learn things. And based on some of the things that we've been doing, we were able to identify that we needed to add for the SBEC the opportunity to seek revocation immediately to allow them to tighten up timelines if there is just direct violation of SBEC rule or a board order. This allows the board to address those problems, but all of the due process pieces for preparation programs remain in place. This just allows them to go ahead and seek revocation and move to that step if there's direct violation of rules, board orders, or statute. And it also introduces the availability for the SBEC to say that preparation programs do need to provide staff with verification that they are complying with any board orders or agreed orders. So that's key to make sure that, like, once we've got an agreement, that we're able to monitor that. So those were the updates to the sanction procedures. And a little bit here into our accountability manual. So in the past, so for folks who don't do this every day, when we do our accountability calculations for preparation programs, if there are 10 or fewer individuals, we add additional years of data to that. In the past, when we've turned off an indicator and then turned it back on, we've reset that process. Since we've had all the indicators turned off the past couple of years, we're going to go ahead and reset that process for all of our indicators. That means that we'll use this year's data, but instead of going back to prior years, we will, if the small group is in play, we'll not report that this year and then only report it in subsequent years once we've got 3 years of data or more than 10 folks. So just going along with what we've done previously related to small groups. Our next category is related to commendation calculations. So we are changing the level for one of those commendations, our retention piece that is lowering the metric. We had it at 95%, ran it for 3 years. I think we only awarded it one time. We think that 85% is still a very, very good 5-year retention rate. In fact, we modeled this out, and we're still kind of capturing just the folks who are at the very top here, which is our directive from the board related to commendations. So we brought that. Also updating our calculation descriptions in our manual to match how we do stuff elsewhere, and providing additional clarification in our language about those calculations. And then finally, we are providing, oh, I'm sorry, I missed this piece. Our commendation committee meeting, our innovative preparation commendation committee also met and had a great discussion related to the timeline for for the innovative EPP commendation, and also developed the language you see on the right as the next area of commendation for the innovative preparation category. And then finally, we were doing some ASEP manual cleanup. Got to run through these a few times, simplifying and clarifying language, removing footnotes, updating dates, taking care of outdated language, clarifying indicator 3, updating our examples, and implementing Senate Bill 2066, which is a language change in our principal and teacher surveys. So those are, we presented all that to the board. As I noted, they did not have additional pieces for us, so we will, upon review, we do have just a couple of other minor examples that we want to add to the manual, which we'll go ahead and do before we bring a proposal item, but then we'll have that proposal item at the next meeting. So that's an update on what's going on with 229. I'm looking forward to that next meeting. Dr. Ward, I do see that your hand is up. Happy to provide any clarity on any of the pieces here.
Thanks, Mark. Two quick questions. I know that you guys will be attending the joint summer meetings. That's July, I think it's July or June 13th. As far as the new reporting for the teachers and the school placements, will you have that kind of outlined so that as we're setting up spreadsheets and stuff over the summer, that we would be able to go ahead and set those systems up early in the summer for that?
That's a great prompt. We are, based on some feedback we've gotten, we are a little bit, we don't have our requirements finalized yet with our IT group. And so if we have those finalized by then, we will be happy to share them. If not, we will share them via newsletter. Okay. Once we've got them, but it does, you know, we've got back and forth with our IT department on this because it is an IT product that's being developed. Sure. But as soon as we've got them, we'll start sharing them out. And if we do have them by that timeline, we'll do that.
Great. And then one quick question about the commendations. And I do understand that, you know, we want to reward the top of the top. And I know, or I believe that some of the categories, it's just the top 5 that are listed. And I was wondering if there has been any consideration also to longevity, like recognizing a university or an EPP for, say, a pass rate, you know, exam pass rates of consistent high quality that maybe aren't, you know, the 95 or 97% or whatever it takes to do that, but longevity, like you for 5 years you've had you know, a very high pass rate, because, you know, 5 out of 124 or however many, that's can be very hard, especially for smaller programs where one person's test score can swing you one way or the other pretty dramatically. So I just wanted to throw that out as something for consistency over time, as opposed to the kind of you'll appear in the list one year and then you're not the next year kind of thing.
That's an interesting idea. You know, I don't think that that's emerged from the board yet, but definitely something that I think we can talk about in some spaces. Having not kind of like run it by the board at a discussion, I don't know about you know, a timeline for that discussion, but I think that it's an interesting idea, and I think that it's definitely something that we can have a discussion about. That's cool. Anything else? Thanks, everybody.
Awesome, y'all. Well, next on our agenda is to talk through the Epac's working groups. Pam was having a little bit of internet connectivity issues, so I don't know if she's back online or not, but I'm gonna drive until her internet decides to be nice to her. But in terms of our Epac working groups, we began this discussion together as a group in February, really recognizing that there are some avenues in which the Epac has an opportunity to really kind of dig in more deeply than we potentially have an opportunity to do in these broader full committee discussions. And really thinking about opportunities in areas of high interest to you all as our stakeholder group, but also recognizing high interest or high priority areas of the board. And so we proposed this opportunity to develop working groups around a few areas that have been of consistent discussion amongst this group and amongst the SBEC, specifically focused on alternative performance assessments for certification, the effective preparation framework, and then reading academies and educator preparation were 3 topics that we identified as potential working group focus areas coming out of our last meeting together. We sent out a survey as a follow-up from that meeting to solicit interest from members of the committee. And we did receive a pretty high level of interest across the 3 committees that we proposed. I do recognize, though, that that some folks didn't complete the survey. And so if that was not for lack of intention of wanting to serve on a committee, but maybe not circling back to the form, we will give folks an additional opportunity to sign up for a committee if they do have an interest in participating. But we did send out emails to all of the folks who did sign up for either the effective preparation framework or alternative performance assessment working group earlier this week to confirm your participation in the working group and begin to identify times to meet collaboratively to begin that engagement. I will name that the Reading Academies working group really appreciate folks identifying interest in participating in that working group. We'll share more information in the coming weeks as we begin to dive a little bit deeper into some of those discussions. But recognizing that there's topics that are underway, I think particularly given our next item with the effective preparation framework, I wanted to name that we'll also be leveraging those working groups in the interim. I'm happy to take any questions about working groups. I think Dr. Ward, I see your hand up.
Yes, Jessica, thank you. I'm excited to do this. My one question is, I'm not sure what the level of expertise is in the Epac as far as the reading academies, as you know, like I'm a math science person. So I was just wondering if there isn't sufficient expertise about what the impact would be on reading programs at the university or within teachers on the committee who are having to do this work in addition to, you know, their daily job. If there would be consideration that we might expand or allow organizations to nominate someone who is actually reading faculty to get the EPP perspective.
Appreciate that feedback, Dr. Ward. I think that those are all things as we work internally with our internal Reading Academies team. There's a number of stakeholder groups that they also leverage in their processes. So certainly I think more information to come there, but that's certainly something for us to take into consideration. So, other thoughts, questions about the working groups? I just want to name 2. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Jessica, this is Holly. Can you clarify what the idea is with the reading academies and EPPs, just to, because I know we talked about it at our last meeting, but what's the conceptualization there?
Yeah, I think so. There's 2 levels. One, we named for you all in our last meeting that there's work underway already to streamline some of the requirements for the reading academies for those candidates who have successfully passed the Science of Teaching reading exam. So that's work that's already underway in the field. And then I think the thought is moving forward. Are there additional recommendations that this group could generate related to ways that our Texas preparation programs could support Reading Academies implementation even further? And so I think that, you know, we're open to, I think this is an opportunity to generate some creative solutions to a challenge that some folks are identifying in the field. So I think some thoughts have been, is there some of the Reading Academy content that could be integrated into Educator preparation program coursework if that was a choice that the program wanted to make, et cetera. So I think really it's an open group. I think it's an opportunity to kind of hear from some of the challenges that folks are experiencing in the field, and then the working group really kind of dig into those challenges and make some recommendations.
I mean, is it conceived of as a potential EPPs being a potential provider of reading academies for current teachers?
I think that could potentially be a recommendation, Holly. I think also a recommendation could be that the EPPs be providers of reading academies training for pre-service educators, so that they have the training even before they're hired as a teacher of record, right? Those are all, I think, over the course of the past few years, I think there's been a number of kind of creative solutions or ideas that folks have for how to potentially streamline some of this or move it into pre-service rather than in service. So I think all those things would be on the table for discussion.
Okay, and then thank you. And then the other quick question I have is, I'm still struggling with this characterization of the alternative performance assessment as a certification exam. I don't, so is that is the focus, that will be the focus of that working group, that they're looking at this as a certification exam?
That will be the focus, that it would be an alternative performance assessment certification exam in alignment with the discussion item that we put to the board at our April meeting.
I mean, I'm having trouble figuring this one out. So if that's the case, is that moving toward candidates or programs picking which certification exam their candidates take?
A good question, Holly. So the directive from the board in April was to go back to stakeholders and really solicit from stakeholders the potential utility of continuing to pursue this route of an alternative performance assessment certification exam. And then if there was utility there, what would the parameters be? And so that would be, so based on that directive from the board, that would be the focus and topic of discussion with this working group.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, now I think we can get to the fun stuff, which is digging into the hard work that you all engaged in soliciting feedback from your stakeholders related to the effective preparation framework. So as Emily named, want to express our gratitude for folks who spent time convening their stakeholders and generating this feedback, putting this feedback together. We're really excited to be able to dig into it together with you all today. And I will name, I was remiss to not name this on the previous section too, just also gratitude for folks who are willing to sign up for other working groups. I know your time is incredibly valuable. And so your willingness to spend more time together as a group, and many of you chose to participate in more than one working group. Again, just really appreciate your willingness to continue to come to the table and work through these questions and opportunities collaboratively. Dr. Ward, I see your hand again. Additional question you have?
No, actually, there's a couple in the chat that I wanted to make sure got recognized from the previous section. Christina Correa has students in class and she had a question.
I appreciate that, Liz. I'm super happy to monitor the chat and answer those questions when they fit into the agenda. Thanks so much. I'll take care of that.
Alrighty. Well, with that, Pam, I'll turn it over to you to kick us off into the effective preparation framework section.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. And fingers crossed, Wi-Fi works for the next hour and a half. So appreciate the grace during this Wi-Fi season of my life. All right, so before we begin to dig into this feedback, we do want to start by sharing some context around this particular work session with the broader Epac membership. And then we're going to have an opportunity for you to choose specific breakout rooms that you'd like to join, review the great feedback that's come in, and also provide additional feedback. We really want to lean into this group and giving us this additional feedback to further develop the EPF. And then finally, after our breakout room work sessions, we're going to come back together and identify just some next steps to keep this work going. We've got a lot of momentum in this space right now, so we want to keep that work going. And then also name some key events that are going to take place in terms of our next steps. Yeah, thanks, Jess. So today's work session we recognize as just a really great opportunity for us to, like I said, lean into your expertise. We want to be able to examine and identify what high quality educator preparation practices looks like for all of our Texas EPPs. I should also name that we have just a gift among this group, that this group represents a diverse perspectives from P12 to EPPs. And that's really a critical component as we develop the EPF so that it does reflect a truly diverse and thoughtful, I'll say, iterative process with this ultimate goal of all of ours, I know, which is that this EPF would serve as an anchor so that we are developing a common language and also, well, I would say a common language around the high quality practices, but also being able to support our EPPs in continuous improvement so that every candidate, again, common vision, common understanding, every candidate has is well prepared and is ready to meet the needs of all of our Texas students. So we've organized the breakout rooms by the components that, or I'll call them these potential levers, that were drafted by Epac in summer of 2021. So this group began this great work. And so you'll see those breakout rooms identified here, from admissions, curriculum and coursework, training, supervision and support, P12 partnerships, and also assessment and evaluation. So you're going to have an opportunity, Epac members, to identify 3 of the 5 breakout sessions that you would like to join. Because of time, as you can imagine, we don't have time to get into all 5 of those. But what I love about this opportunity is that you get into 3 of those that you are interested in learning more about, reviewing the feedback. But this is really going to set up our EPF working group well, is to also leverage the great feedback from this team, and as they begin to then refine the EPF. I do also want to name that there are 20 minutes per breakout room. So we've allotted an hour for breakout space. So within these 20 minutes, you can see the breakdown there that you'll have time to independently review. If you've not had an opportunity to review the feedback that's come in to date, then you have some time to review that feedback specific to the potential lever or that component. And then we're going to have some time just to have great conversation. And so there's going to be a TA staff member in each of the breakout rooms whose primary role is just to lean in and listen and take great notes. And then we want to give us time in our virtual space to get in and out of breakout rooms. And so we will transition from breakout room to whole group room. You get to identify the next breakout room that you want to go into and do the same great thing again, and then back and forth those 3 times. Before I, actually, I'm going to ask Jessica, because I don't want to risk the Wi-Fi situation here, but before we share our screen that's going to help you navigate through those resources for today's work session, I do want to, and I think we've named this a few times, but just a huge thank you for the feedback that's come in. There were many stakeholder groups that did provide some really rich, meaningful feedback that we're going to be able to use to refine the EPF. When we dig into those resources, you'll see where the stakeholder groups actually are named in terms of what feedback they provided. So just a huge thank you to our stakeholder groups. And for those of you that really leaned into those stakeholder groups, just a real blessing. I also want a big shout out and thank you. And I know she has to go to graduation here shortly, but Dr. Liz Ward also provided some additional resources that can be found in folder 5. So folder 4, great feedback. Folder 5, you'll see there are the additional resources that Liz added to that folder. So Liz, thank you for gathering those resources for us as a part of this development process. I would say that these 2 top folders are our supplemental resources. These are the, in terms of allowing you to provide feedback for the EPF for today's work session. You've already seen a lot of what's in there right now, but so I would just use those as kind of like a backup resource, but I would say folder 6 is your primary resource. And so in this folder, you'll see that there are these, oh, sorry, that's my system. You'll see these various components that are listed here in this folder. I want to start with the crosswalk. So in this crosswalk, this is the initial draft that you all, Epac members, developed in summer of 21. So I want a huge shout out and thank you to our good friends and colleagues at TNTP who leaned in and helped support this crosswalk and the summary of all the feedback, a lot of feedback. So big thank you to them. But in this crosswalk, you'll see where these draft components, initial draft components by the Epac, and what they did is they identified where those components can be found in the teacher regulatory committee's draft of the EPF. So the clear alignment between what Epac then indicated in terms of those high quality practices and also what the regulatory committee also noted as well. Just a quick also reminder, and I can't remember, Dominique McCain, I think you may have said this in the February meeting, but the goal of the Teacher Regulatory Committee was to use this foundational document to then drive the development of the Regulatory Committee's draft EPF. So, and you can see that here, clear alignment. There are two components that are not clearly aligned, and so we're going to talk about those in our breakout rooms, but those being admissions and P12 partnerships. And there's also, which takes me to the next document, Jess.
Pam, can I add one thing? The regulatory committee was specifically focused on curriculum, coursework and training, and then assessment, which they shifted into progress monitoring. That's not to say that they didn't identify other areas that were also important to take into consideration. They just had a more narrow charge. And so while admissions and P12 partnership weren't explicitly generated on that end, I think it's not to say that those things aren't critically important, because you all clearly put a strong stake in the ground around those. So just wanted to name that they intentionally only focused on 3 areas, but all of them are critical.
Yeah, thank you, Jess.
Pam, I actually have a question real quick. So, you know, the text in red is not reflected in both EPFs, meaning the regulatory committees and Epacs, right?
Right, meaning just the draft content. So that it's just to acknowledge that this is the Epac's initial draft of the content. We're saying, where is there overlap? Holly, this actually, Sansi, you had asked for a crosswalk of what's in one versus
Right.
what's in both. And so that's what the intent here is, to say that there's content that's the majority of the content is overlapping, but there's a few things that you all named that weren't captured in that other tool too. So just trying to create that clarity.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thanks, Holly. All right, so Jess, then the next document, if we can go to, is that feedback summary document. Yeah, so in this overall feedback, this is high level trends that were coming out of all the feedback. There were multiple areas by which stakeholder groups indicated like this was important, this should be a consideration. And so what was developed is this particular document. And then there's also a specific identification for both admissions and P12 partnerships, which can be found on page 2. Again, in your breakout room, your facilitator will point you in the direction to review those specifically if you've chosen 1 or 2 of those breakout rooms. But that's where you can find the overall summary for the feedback. And then the last folder is this consolidated feedback folder. And these are those 3, like Jessica names, those 3 areas by which the draft of the regulatories, of the EPF, the regulatory then developed. So within each of those, and we don't need to open up, well, you can open up one, Jess, if you want to, just as a curriculum would be fine. Yeah. So in each of these, what they've done is they've noted the feedback that came in from the stakeholder group, specifically naming the group that indicated that shared that particular feedback. So this is really helpful. Again, your facilitator in your breakout space will point you in the direction specific to your lever, your component that you're reviewing. But this is also very helpful in seeing what others have said to help inform your feedback in your breakout rooms. And then one last thing I wanted to bring to your attention. You received yesterday afternoon, I think it was, a resource to help navigate through. I mean, imagine there's a lot of, the volume of feedback is fantastic, but we want to give you an opportunity to navigate through that seamlessly. And so you received a document to be able to do that. And that just has all the links there for you. And also has kind of like the charge of the group as well, and some additional context to help, like, again, navigate through those files. Yeah, thank you, Jess. All right, so before, I'm going to transition here. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Oh, yes, sorry. Can you one more time explain the difference between the crosswalk or what the crosswalk document is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the crosswalk document was the original draft of that document was what Epac developed in summer. And those were those 5 components that these breakout rooms are organized by. So what our friends and colleagues over at TP did is they demonstrated the alignment between what Epac indicated as high quality components for ed prep programs, alignment to what then the work that happened within the regulatory committee shortly after the Epac met in summer regarding this work. So it's the align. Oh, okay, thank you. I was gonna say, did I answer your question? All right, thank you. All right, Jess, I think we can go to the next slide. All right, so before we then break out into breakout rooms, I was thinking about this last night. I think we've all normed on the norms in breakout rooms because we've been meeting virtually for a minute now, but it is helpful to go ahead and just, let's just be explicit and name those. So first thing, like Emily shared earlier, just in terms of all virtual spaces, love for your camera to be on if possible. It always just creates a nice engaging atmosphere. And we really want you to feel empowered to ask questions. And so it's important that all voices are heard, which takes me to the 4th component there in terms of norms, is that letting everybody have voice, giving everybody an opportunity to share. Certainly want you to, it's going to be smaller groups, right? So feel free to unmute yourself and have your question voiced, or feel free to, of course, to use chat if you're more comfortable doing that. And then we just would encourage you to stay and to remain engaged. It's going to be a good time. I was meeting with some colleagues this morning in preparation of this, and we're excited. It's going to be fun to dig into this. And I'm so excited about this process and this effective preparation framework. And so what a better way, like Emily said, is to spend our Friday morning doing this kind of work. So anyway, looking forward to that. With that, let me see if there's any kind of questions before we get into our breakout rooms. And then if not, then I can move us into breakout spaces. Real quick, let me name this though too, is that you get to choose, right? So we've organized the breakout rooms that you choose which breakout room that you'd like to go into first. I'm gonna come back into whole group after that 20 minutes and we'll do the same thing again. Andrea, how are you?
Hey, how are you? Thank
I'm
you
well,
for that
thanks.
overview. I'm sorry if you already said this, but the capture document or the capture section, that's for us to take notes on.
That's a great question. And you're more than welcome to take notes on that. That's completely up to you. We're not going to collect your notes unless you want to send them to us. We'll be taking notes on our side though, but it's up to you.
Okay, so that's just for us then.
That's right, absolutely. And y'all, because I've been kicked out, I think 4 times this morning of this great space, I'm having to regenerate our breakout room. So if you'll give me 2 shakes while I
Pam, while you're doing that, I'll name, I put in the chat the link to the document, Andrea, that you were referencing, that you feel free to download that to your computer if you want to take local notes. And then just noting that in the resources section of that document, that's where we have hyperlinked all of the relevant documents. So you've got access to all the documents via, it's your one-stop shop to access to all the documents. And then if you scroll down to the subsequent pages, by topic area that you want to engage more deeply in, we also have those hyperlinked there. So trying to make it as user-friendly as possible, but your breakout room facilitator will also help navigate.
Pam, before you do execute the breakout group Zoom away, can everybody smile and look at their camera? I'm going to take a picture of our group today. We do not do that often enough. So if everybody will, sit up straight, do your thing. I'm going to take a quick picture. Oh, how do I do this with? Let me see. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you. I don't know where that picture will go, but you'll all get credit.
That's great, Emily.
Thank you for indulging me.
That's awesome. All right, y'all. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakout rooms again. Choose the breakout room that you'd like to go into initially. So let's go ahead and do that. You've got 20 minutes in your breakout space.
It's here.
Ma'am.
And so the one that's the crosswalk document, is that to be the main one we kind of work off of?
Yeah, so that's my recommendation. I was looking through this last night. I would anchor to the crosswalk and then navigate from the crosswalk into the other documents if the lever is applicable. So if you're in curriculum and coursework, there is the curriculum document that the regulatory committee also drafted. So you're going to kind of transition between crosswalk to that document, but staying anchored to the crosswalk. Yes, ma'am.
And so in that respect, like the crosswalk under, our committee was curriculum.
Yep.
Under that, on the crosswalk, it says curriculum and coursework aligned with critical competencies. And then it identifies a bunch of critical competencies. And I don't know where those came from because they're not in the teacher regulatory document. And as far as I know, they're not in the Epac generated document. So that was a question I had, is where those came from.
So can you specifically, and I'll tell you what, Hallie, let me open up the breakout rooms. And if you and I, and the reason I'm saying it is because I want to see exactly what we're talking about, but I want to just make sure we have enough time to get into breakout rooms.
Yeah, we could do this, offline or
okay,
later.
that would be perfect because those should all align with the original EPF, the one that the regulatory drafted. And so those critical competencies should be, but I'm going to do some digging too, Holly. So you can cuddle up. How's that?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dina. I'll look into that too. I appreciate that. All right, y'all, I'm going to go ahead and open up the breakout room. So let's do this again. Have fun, everyone. Choose your, by the way, we're going to, let me get out of this. Here we go. You're going to choose your room right now, though. And I need logistics help, Judith, with this question. So right now they've been assigned because they chose their own room. They can just reassign themselves, right, into the next room. Once I open the rooms.
I would say let's give it a shot and see how it goes. And if not, we'll
this is going to be so fun. This is so fun, everyone. Here we go. Love the Zoom.
I love it when Pam tells me something's fun. It's just, I didn't, oh yes, you're right. This is fun.
That's awesome.
Pam, it's telling me that you're saying for me to join admissions, and that was the group I was just in. Oh, never mind. I see another way I can join another group. Thanks.
So here we go. So we'll go ahead. I know we're right almost at the top of the hour. So just very quickly talking about some of our next steps. As you can see here in May and June, so excited to be able to work with our EPF working group. And so I heard a lot of great conversations in my room specifically. And some of that was, the trend was, this is a lot of information. So the good news is we get to dig it even deeper in our EPF working group and bring back status updates to the broader Epac community. To that end, with the work that we'll be doing in the EPF working group, we are going to refine the EPF in our working group, and then we'll be able to put, have our SPEC review version 2, we'll call it, of the EPF at their July meeting. And then a couple other things we're excited about too is just, again, just garnering some really rich feedback, is working with our EPPs across Texas. So those that have been awarded commendations, and also various regional EPPs that represent the diversity of Texas in terms of our ed prep programs. And so we'll be leaning into them and getting their feedback. And then we're going to bring all that back to our EPF working group. So EPF working group, thank you in advance for the work that you're going to do, because it's going to be fun. I'll stand that fun all day. All right, so then a couple of things just to note here is that we'll continue that in our EPF working group, but also want to also make you aware of our statewide survey that we'll be sending out to all of Texas's EPPs in September. And then we're going to then share all of the great findings, and then we're working towards a version 3 that we'll be able to share at the CSOAP meeting. And then you can see our main goal here is working with SPEC in December to share that final version. Also being able to share what you all, EPF working group, have talked about and proposed in terms of revising Chapter 228. So excited about that. All right, Jess, I know we're almost out of time, so I'm going to turn it back over to you. Thanks, y'all, so much for a great morning. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Pam. And I will name, I know there were some folks who said, oh man, I want to be a part of a working group, but I didn't sign up. We will send out the working group survey again with our follow-up. In our last minute, I want to acknowledge there was a few additional questions that we received from folks. I'll name that Dr. Chevalier asked about current Epac vacancies. I think in light of Emily's comments at the start of our meeting today, we'll be pausing on any discussion around Epac vacancies. Dr. Chevalier also asked about TEA planning related to our testing contracts. Really appreciate that question, and we're engaged in internal conversations around our current contracts, and we'll look forward on updating folks when it's appropriate to do so. And then the final question was around, Christina had put in the chat around representatives from Epac on the teacher vacancy task force or collaboration there. So I'll turn that over to Emily if you have any additional notes on that end.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jessica. So the Teacher Vacancy Task Force, which Jessica and I and other members of the internal staff are on and are supporting with Kelvy Oser, who's also here with us today. It's made up of teachers and school system leaders. There's a link I can put in the chat to the full membership. So other education stakeholders will be invited to present to the Teacher Vacancy Task Force during working groups in the future. So we have an EPP improvement or teacher preparation improvement working group that'll be meeting in June. Excuse me. So that those stakeholder groups also, as the Teacher Vacancy Task Force continues in its work, will include school leaders, community organizations, the other stakeholders who we certainly need to hear from and value their positions. But the membership itself is posted online and that membership is set. So let me throw that link in the chat for everybody. Otherwise, we're 1 minute over. If y'all want to hang out for that link, I can, let me grab it.
And then I have a quick follow-up question. I've noticed that there's been some turnover on Epac. Can we get a new list of the membership? Because I think I have a pretty old list.
Sure. I think Christy had to jump off, but we'll certainly bring that back.
I'm still here. I'm still here. Sorry, I'm still hanging on. So, as we noted earlier, well, the only person who has actually gotten off of Epac is Dr. Galvan. The board actually is the one who approves those members. And so Dr. Galvan is the only one who is no longer serving on Epac. And as Emily talked about earlier with the restructuring and the reconfigurations, coming down the pipe, we're just going to hold off on making any other changes.
I know my list, there's people on this call today that I don't see on my list, and my list is pretty old. So,
well, but it's still the same list, right? So the February 2021, everything is still solid. Now, as you know, I think some people, shared the links out, shared the Zoom link out. We cannot control for if you're on this list, you should only be able to attend. So those are some of the things that we've not been able to control for. But the February 2021 approval, other than Dr. Veronica Galvan, are still sitting members.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't realize other people could be on as well.
Well, again, this is one of the things that we have asked and begged to please not, because, as statute does require, is that whenever the board approves a committee, unless they come back and approve any updates, that original list. So, Dr. Galvan is the only one that the board had not replaced. And as we were, digging into next steps, and as what Emily shared earlier, it came to our attention that we've got some restructuring to do so we can be in compliance.
Can I jump in, Christy? I think we have the attendance list from today's meeting. We'll cross-reference that with Epac. If there are folks that are in attendance, I'm sure it's 100% well-meaning and coming from a good place, but it is not aligned to how the Epac as a stakeholder group should be running. So we'll reach out to those folks and just gently let them know there are other ways to engage with us. And I'll also reiterate to all the Epac staff to please keep the invite list and the Zoom link to the members who are.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be exclusive, but I also, if I want someone else from my organization to be in my place or attend, I would like to be able to do that. So
Yeah, at this time, we're not going to open it up for sit-ins for replacements. We're going to pause with where we are right now, get our house in order and relaunch next summer. So happy to talk offline to anyone who has more questions or thoughts on that, but we are now 4 minutes over time and I really want to be respectful of everybody's to-do list today. So please take great care, have a wonderful weekend, and we will talk and see everyone soon. I'm throwing my email address and cell phone number in the chat so everybody has it. And everybody take great care. I don't think we have a date set for the next meeting yet. If we do, I'll make sure to follow up with that here in my follow-up email. Thanks so much, everyone. Take great care.
Thank you. Good weekend. Bye-bye.